It was fun. I love this sport. I gave it my all. It's fucking crazy. I had a blast, and thank you to all the fans and everyone.
All right, folks, it's over. Anthony Joshua knocks out Jake Paul in the 6th round of their fight on Netflix.
Style that would align with a ring that size, a negative style, as we mentioned. It really comes down to the fan interest. Jake Paul is on a 2-fight stretch coming into this one, which really put his reputation on the line.
Boxing pros react to the news that Jake Paul might retire after his shocking knockout loss to Anthony Joshua. Jake has suggested that once he reaches his boxing goals, he may quit the sport and try for a career in the NFL, marking a big change in his sports journey.
I want to go to the NFL after this. Like legitimately just to play like safety and just deck people. No, I swear to God, I'm about to bring hella ratings to whatever team I'm on.
Where would you want to go if you can go to any team?
Shit, the Browns.
So
I can run a 4.34.
He's the fastest man on the planet.
I got hands. I have the size, the power. I can knock people out with one punch. So why can't I play free safety?
Do you think you coming into the NFL would be the equivalent of like when an NFL player says, I'm going to try to box now?
No, because I played football my whole life. At the end of the day, it's coverage, knowing your plays, and then just being fast and willing to sacrifice your body to make a tackle.
The boxing world reacts strongly after the fight. Former ex-user IB shared a very harsh reaction to the shocking knockout, saying Jake Paul was knocked out and that his boxing career was finished. IB claimed Jake was done and had no future left in the sport. Duke McKenzie also spoke about the fight and pointed out that Jake Paul looked much smaller than Anthony Joshua. He explained that even when Jake tried to throw punches, he could not reach AJ properly, showing how uneven the matchup really was. McKenzie warned that Jake should stop this now because continuing to fight much bigger opponents could be dangerous and could seriously damage his boxing reputation.
Every time Jake Paul tried to throw a shot, he would lunge in, jump in, and because he was so short, he'd miss. And then he ended up stumbling over his feet and falling over. Sometimes in that fight, he reminded me of, have you seen that Kung Fu film called The Drunken Master? Except for he wasn't a master. As a Kung Fu guy walks around and normally kicks people's ass, but he looks drunk all the time. That's what that fight reminded me of. It was such a poor showing from Jake Paul. You know, I mean, it's a well-documented fact. There was a lot of money on the line. And I'm sure you, Max, as I would, and anybody else in the street would fight Anthony Joshua for 75 million. You just would. And the same thing would happen. And even after the fight, now the fight's over, you're 75 million better off.
Another ex-user, Chelsea, reacts passionately to Jake Paul's shocking loss. They shared their honest relief online, saying they hardly visit the site anymore but were very glad Jake lost, hoping he would finally be quiet. Former UFC champion Michael Bisping also gave his reaction, calling Anthony Joshua's performance a masterclass. He explained that Jake got badly hurt, as AJ's strong uppercuts and punch combinations left him no way to escape. Even when Jake tried to run, he couldn't avoid the hits. Bisping stressed that the damage to Jake's face and overall condition was serious, making it clear that he needs time to fully rest and recover before thinking about any future fights. The match also showed that Jake has limits when facing top-level opponents.
In my humble opinion, because I'm a big Anthony Joshua fan. Of course, I've been a supporter for the longest time. A rather lackluster, unmotivated Anthony Joshua that didn't look like he was being particularly nasty, right? A lot of the time he was out of range, and okay, it is hard to land a shot on someone that's backing up and moving away the whole time. And there was a lot of times where he had him in the corner and he could have thrown a shot. And sometimes he was telegraphing his shots. And anytime he did go in to throw a punch, as I said before, Jake Paul would shoot in and turn it into a wrestling match. And even when he wasn't shooting in, he was clinching a lot. This is boxing. It's not MMA, as we know. The referee should have done a much better job of getting in there and separating them much, much faster. As I say, it was the 6th round. I think it was the 4th round he got dropped twice. In the 5th round, he got through it. In the 6th round, caught him with the jab, then a glancing right hook. He goes down, and that was that. That was all she wrote, right? I did a live. There was about 9,000 people watching at one point. Nobody was particularly enjoying the matchup. Listen, okay? I respect both men. I respect anyone really that steps into the ring, okay? And certainly going up against Anthony Joshua, that was a tall task, okay? You know, metaphorically and figuratively, right? It was a tall task. It was a big job. It was a tough opponent. It was a mismatch, and it was, right? Jake Paul never worried Anthony Joshua once. He never rung his bell. He never caused any damage. He never had him worried. He never did anything. It wasn't a fight. It was a display of how long can Jake Paul last? Can he run away long enough for it to be credible?
Ex-user Cabral's Finest reacts to Jake Paul's shocking injury, saying it was very serious. They posted that Jake was taken to the hospital with a possible broken jaw and may have been forced into early retirement. Sean Jones also reacted to the intense fight with Anthony Joshua, pointing out that the match was real and not scripted. He said that even though Jake's jaw was broken, AJ didn't use his full power, meaning it could have been much worse. Jones stressed how serious the injury was and said the fight showed how tough it is to face a world-class boxer like Joshua.
We go. For all those people who were fully convinced that this fight was 100% rigged, like people said that this is a clown show, and they said this is rigged, this is scripted. Okay, so now Joshua's won. What are you going to say to that? So was it scripted that Joshua was going to win? You see this whole narrative about, oh, the fight's rigged, the fight's scripted. That's illegal to do, and Joshua is not going to tarnish his legacy by doing something like that. Would Jake Paul do something like that? Maybe so, yeah, but not someone like Joshua. Come on. Now, to be fair, 80% of that fight was looking a little bit dodgy. It was looking like Joshua wasn't throwing as much as he usually would. Jake Paul was landing on Joshua. He landed a really strong jab that knocked Joshua's head back. He landed a couple of decent overhand rights. In fact, Jake was kind of the first one who landed the biggest shots of the fight. But this is the thing, anyone who fights, even on like a low-level basis, or who just does some sparring, will understand that when you fight someone who has got nowhere near the skill level as you, sometimes it can be a little bit harder because they're awkward. They're doing stuff that you don't really expect. You know, sometimes when you fight beginners, it's a bloody nightmare. Just like, you know, awkward movements. You're like, what are they throwing? You don't expect certain shots to come that do come. And then you fight someone who's a little bit more traditionally sound with the fundamentals, and it's almost a little bit easier. And I think that's what we've seen here in this fight. AJ has had an easier time with some fighters who've got like 40 professional fights with 20 KOs on the record than he did with Jake Paul. Why is that? Oh, because it's scripted. It's scripted. No, it's not scripted. It's just because Jake Paul is awkward and he's a beginner in relation to Joshua. So Joshua just took some time to figure them out. You could see Joshua was getting a little bit frustrated in that 4th and 5th round, but then he started figuring out Jake Paul's game plan.
User Mir71 issues a strong warning to Jake Paul after his loss, telling him to stay away from boxing and not come back. Many real boxing fans feel the same way. Analyst Liam Goff also warns that Jake is in serious trouble after his brutal defeat by Anthony Joshua. He says Jake's boxing future is on pause because of serious injuries that need a lot of time to heal. With a broken jaw and other injuries, Jake must fully focus on recovery. Goff stresses that until Jake is completely healthy, he cannot fight again, and this time is very important for his long-term health and sports career.
When he had that face-off with Tank Davis, he was looking at a guy who was, 5-6 inches shorter than him and probably 60-70 pounds lighter, right? So he was probably looking at that thinking, yeah, you're a legit boxer. Yeah, you hit very hard, but look how much bigger I am to you. Contrast that to him looking up at Anthony Joshua and realizing, oh my God, look at the size of you in comparison to me. That's a bit different. And I think with Jake Paul, it really dawned on him what's going on. But Jake Paul has to keep face. He has to stay essentially in that persona that, you know, I am the man, I'm going to win this, trying to sell a dream to a casual, a bit like what Eddie Hearn does, trying to sell the casual audience that this is going to be a real fight, quote unquote. It was a real fight. It's not scripted, but you know what I mean, that he's really in this fight. That's what he was trying to do. And he did that well up until fight night. Boy, did he fail miserably on fight night. Again, I give him credit. He doesn't need to box. He can choose an easier profession, as I say. But to go in and to run around the ring like that, that was something else entirely. I mean, he was doing his best Roadrunner impression in there. He was running around that ring from the minute that bell went. That was all he was trying to do. And listen, AJ's performance, I can critique it from a defensive point of view, that he got hit with some silly shots that he probably shouldn't have been hit with. He was trying to cut the ring off in a ring as big as that. It's not easy. All right. And furthermore, if you're in there with an opponent who purely just wants to survive, he's no interest in winning the fight. He just wants to go the rounds. People, you could be one of the most you could be a prime Mike Tyson, Bone Crusher Smith, prime example. People never talk about that fight with Mike Tyson. because they say, oh yeah, prime Mike Tyson beats all these guys.
After suffering an injury. In his recent fight, Jake Paul updates fans on X about his recovery. He thanks his doctors and says the surgery went well, but he is in a lot of pain and can only drink liquids for 7 days. He also shows gratitude to the caring hospital team. Wade later comments on the fight, saying Jake may have felt he had already achieved a lot and was focused on big money fights since he doesn't need to defend titles. Wade mentions possible future fights with stars like Canelo and even Tyson Fury if Jake fully commits. However, he admits Jake was not close to Anthony Joshua in size, power, speed, or skill, while still respecting Jake for taking on such a tough challenge. He ends by saying the fight created huge hype online and was exciting for boxing fans.
To come back in 2026, and I don't think he fights a ton in 2026. I think it'll be a very slow year for him. Look for those two guys as the main two he would fight. I wish it was Tommy Fury, but I doubt it. On the other side, I want to see him get back into boxing specifically, get back into committing to this, because there is a massive, massive fight that awaits him in Tyson Fury. It's far past time that it happened. If they don't do it now, they never will. And yeah, man, I don't really know what else to say on this fight. As far as, what happened in there tonight, I know on Twitter people are going to want their money back, or they're going to call it a bad fight or a sloppy fight or whatever. And then there's going to be people, celebrating Jake's downfall. That was always going to be the case. Of course, the first time he gets rocked, dropped, and stopped, people are going to celebrate like it's the 4th of July or it's their birthday or like it's Christmas. So yeah, expect that, but I won't do that here. I won't, because I respect the hell out of him for going and doing it, and there's not any normal people on earth that would have done it. I don't care if you say, oh, for the money I would have, you're lying.
Another X-user, Zane, reacts to the shocking news of Jake Paul's injury with worry and disbelief. He posted that Jake's jaw was badly broken and that he may never fight again, calling what Anthony Joshua did terrible. Reports confirm that Jake's loss left him with a broken jaw, an injury serious enough to keep him out of boxing for at least a year. Medical experts say a double jaw break needs long rest and careful recovery, so Jake must stop all fighting plans. Fans and analysts are concerned, saying a fighter's health comes first. Jake has shared updates, thanking his doctors and admitting he is in pain and limited. For now, his only focus is healing, putting his boxing career on pause.
For those of you that thought that the Anthony Joshua-Jake Paul fight was going to be rigged, these x-rays definitely tell a different story. So on December 19th of 2025, as I'm sure most of you are probably aware, Jake Paul fought the two-time unified heavyweight champion Anthony Joshua at the Cassia Center in Miami, Florida, which was streamed exclusively on Netflix as part of a major boxing event that was promoted by Paul's Most Valuable Promotions. The ending result was Anthony Joshua won by knockout in the 6th round after Jake Paul was knocked down 4 times in total, twice in the 5th round and twice in the 6th round. Anthony Joshua landed 48 punches on Jake Paul compared to Jake Paul landing about 16 on Anthony Joshua. And this is the second professional loss of Jake Paul's fighting career, dropping his record down to 12-2. Now, Jake Paul ended up suffering a double broken jaw during the fight and was taken to the hospital afterward, skipping the post-fight press conference, probably because he probably couldn't talk. But in his in-ring interview, he said, "That was crazy. I had a blast. I think my jaw is broke." Anyway, as far as his professional fighting career is concerned, as of December 20th of 2025, he doesn't have any new opponents that have been announced, and it's expected that his jaw injury is going to take 4 to 6 weeks to recover from. Regardless of how you feel about him, that dude fought a 2-time heavyweight champion and survived. And I think we can all agree that regardless of how you feel, that takes some serious intestinal fortitude.
Analysts Brian Campbell and Shaquille Majuri joined CBS Sports to talk about Jake Paul's recent fight. They said Jake focused on moving a lot and staying away from danger, which helped him last longer than expected. However, they questioned how he could win a cruiserweight title without fighting more aggressively against top boxers. Campbell added that Jake's fame, not just his skill, may be what keeps his career going with big money fights like KSI or a rematch with Tommy Fury. They also noted that Jake's defensive style and choice of a large ring suggest entertainment and fan interest matter more right now than true championship goals.
Could this be the end for him in terms of what he's doing in the boxing ring?
Listen, so long as people will tune in and so long as Jake Paul is paid by Netflix or any broadcaster to air his fights, we're going to see this continue. And Jake Paul knows his business model, right? Now, this deviated, this AJ fight, which came together kind of last minute after the Tank Davis fight fell apart. But we know Jake Paul's MO here. It's find the most popular guy with the most physical disadvantages for me to fight. And Jake Paul has the benefit that he's turned himself into a villain, or in the pro wrestling circles, a heel. People tune in to watch. We did not tune into this fight to see competitive boxing. Most of us tuned in because we thought, here's Anthony Joshua. Here's a two-time unified heavyweight champion, a guy who physically just overwhelms Jake Paul. And we're finally going to get what Tyron Woodley and Anderson Silva, Nate Diaz were not physically fit, whether it be through their size, experience, or age to do, and that is knock out Jake Paul. And so because I don't really feel like we got that satisfying comeuppance that a lot of people have been waiting for, it kind of gives Jake Paul a little bit of mystique, I'd almost say, to still try and string this along. Now, I don't know in terms, he says he wants to be cruiserweight champion. I'm not quite sure what the competitive road there is, because let's make no mistake, the reason this fight lasted as long as it did is because Jake Paul focused exclusively on being elusive. He did his best, and kudos to him, right? He did a great job of not getting cornered. He was always on the gas until the gas sort of fell out from underneath him. And so I don't quite know, short of leveraging his popularity, how he's going to get to that title shot if he's not actually going to fight, like really fight an elite boxer. But if he's looking to make money, there's the KSI fight out there. There's the Tommy Fury rematch. There is ways for Jake Paul to sustain what he's doing.
Thanks for watching. Stay tuned and see you next time.